played a bunch of videos of Alex Karp, who I think is one of the great thinkers these days. And also he looks like the guy who from Ready Player One who created the virtual world. But I had Joe Lonsdale sitting in that seat just a couple of weeks ago, and we talked a bit about Palantir, and he smiled when I asked him, but I feel like everybody asked the same question. What is Palantir? That was the same smile he gave me.
Joe Lonsdale just dropped a take on Palantir that changes everything. Check this out.
I'm always tempted to do the literary answer from Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
It's this seeing stone, which is very powerful. It helps you understand the world better. It was originally created by the elves. It was meant to be used for good purposes. It is potentially a very dangerous technology. It's very powerful. It ends up playing a very important role in the way the series goes.
Isn't it fascinating how Palantir's real-world role mirrors its literary namesake? A powerful tool that grants visibility into complex systems, yet, like in Tolkien's world, it raises ethical concerns. The question is, will we use it to strengthen our institutions or let fear-driven narratives hold back its potential?
Because, anyway, I can go.
We could do the entire Lord of the Rings thing, and I know you love the references, yeah.
And basically, there are, and it ultimately gets used for good, even in the Lord of the Rings, where Aragorn shows Sauron the sword, Anduril, the sword that was reforged with which the One Ring was cut off Sauron's finger in the Palantir, and he retakes the Palantir for good. And then Sauron is fooled into launching a premature attack. And then that's how the hobbits get to Mount Doom in Mordor and destroy the One Ring. And so, there's all these. So the Palantir ultimately does get used for good. It was the genesis of the company we founded over 20 years ago was to try to find some way to solve the terrorism intelligence community problem. And if you define technology as doing more with less, is we needed to have more security with fewer violations of civil liberties, fewer intrusions of privacy. And I felt that the low-tech debate version of this was a Luddite ACLU versus a heavy-handed, dumb airport security where, one silly shoe bomber makes everyone take their shoes off for 2 decades after that. And that was the initial goal. And then there are all these ways that you want to sift through data to try to have the libertarian idea was we could not afford to have more terrorist attacks, because if you have a terrorist attack and you don't have a high-tech solution, you will always get the heavy-handed, low-tech stuff that we got after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and all those things. And then, of course, there is some software layer to not just for the intelligence community, but for the military, for the defense capabilities generally, where we need to be able to coordinate resources and coordinate all these things much better. And I don't want to propagandize this too much. I'm always bad at doing this, but I think Palantir is the right way to do this, is the best solution. It's extremely hard to start defense-related tech companies. It's again this very locked-in, frozen, hard-to-change system. That's the glass half-empty version. The glass half-full version is there's also some room for something that can be massively improved, and at some point that matters. And
Palantir's core mission was born from a simple but crucial realization. Without high-tech intelligence, every crisis leads to overreach. Post-9/11 policies weren't just about security. They were a reaction to not having better tools. Palantir's existence allows for targeted, efficient decision-making, reducing the need for broad, intrusive measures that infringe on civil liberties.
I don't know how...
That's the rough story of the
Sure.
company.
So I don't know how much you're doing with the day-to-day there, but I know you love the philosophical debates behind that between privacy and liberty and all of those things. Is there that constant debate between, okay, we have to work with these governments and sort this information, but we don't want to step on these rights, and probably it's different in every country, so there must be just like an endless amount of just purely philosophic debate beyond just the tech stack that you guys are building to help countries make sure that things aren't blowing up, basically.
Yes, but I think there are a lot of debates we have. At the end of the day, we are very pro the Western world. We want to work with Western allied governments. We believe that in some sense our side is still better than the other side on these things. And then I think there are a lot of ways that something like Palantir ends up being also constrained on government action, where if a lot of the abuses, a lot of the most extreme sort of overreach happened in contexts where people thought there would be no accountability ever inside the governments, and that this was probably like something like the Guantanamo stuff in Bush 43. Nobody knew what was going on. If nobody knows, it can go really crazy. And then, of course, at some point, people know, and the inmates take over the asylum,
Right.
and it went probably too much the other way. But there probably were a lot of deep state excesses that happened, where if Palantir had been used, there would have been more of a record of what people were doing. The NSA has not worked with Palantir, and all these different suspicions. One version is just they had a not invented here bias, but I think another version was there were probably a lot of things at NSA where it was too entangled. The FISA courts were way out of control, and if you had this outside software system where you actually tracked how often the stuff was used, there'd be much more risk this would have gotten exposed, and there would have been a track record, much tighter track record of these things, and it actually would have limited it. So we somehow got blocked at NSA very early on, and I tend to think that the explanation Alex and I are sympathetic to was that the people at NSA believed that whatever power the software gave them, it also limited their power because there would be more accountability.
This raises an uncomfortable truth. Many intelligence agencies prefer opaque systems that allow them to operate without scrutiny. Palantir's tracking and auditability would have made government overreach harder to hide, which is likely why adoption faced resistance. Ironically, the very thing critics fear about Palantir, its ability to process vast amounts of data, could have prevented some of the most egregious privacy violations.
Right. It would basically end up with a USAID situation on them in some sense.
At some point, you have a line item tracker. You know
Right.
exactly where the money's going. Like the USAID thing worked because I believe you have a level 5. I think the technical government thing on USAID is you have a level 5 description, which is the line item description. And then there was a level 4 description, which is how you group these things together. And I believe the level 4 was what was reported to the Trump political people. And then the level 5 and level 4 were wildly divergent. This was, by the way, I believe something like this is what Oliver North was charged with in the 1980s. It was sort of that he engaged in fraud because he had mischaracterized various payments. And so I think so many of these, I suspect if we want to be aggressive, so many of the people working at USAID could be charged with fraud, like Oliver North was charged with fraud for mischaracterizing these things. And then this is the sort of thing that was far more possible in this sort of paper, pencil, non-transparent world.
One of the most underappreciated aspects of Palantir is its potential to revolutionize financial oversight within government agencies. The fact that USAID, even in modern times, still reports different financial figures at different levels proves how much bureaucracies rely on outdated reporting structures to maintain plausible deniability. If every expenditure were tracked in a single unalterable system, fraudulent allocations and mischaracterized spending would be exposed instantly. This is why Palantir is seen as a disruptive force, because it doesn't just improve efficiency, it forces accountability at a level many institutions aren't prepared for. When data is recorded immutably, the days of hidden transactions and creative accounting come to an end, and for some, that's a bigger threat than inefficiency ever was.